Picture yourself at 23,000 feet above the North Atlantic in the winter of 1943. Your B-17 has taken flak over occupied France, and now one engine is dead, another trailing smoke. The coastline of England is still 100 miles away, but you're losing altitude fast. Your crew chief looks at you through the intercom with eyes that ask the question nobody wants to voice: are we going to make it? The North Sea below isn't just water. It's a 4 degrees Celsius death sentence, and every Allied pilot knew that ditching meant you had perhaps 15 minutes before hypothermia shut down your body and your mind. But some men survived. Some crews pulled off the impossible, and they did it using techniques so specific, so hard-won through tragedy and training, that they became the unwritten doctrine of survival. This is the story of how Allied airmen turned certain death into a fighting chance. The methodical escape, staying calm while drowning. The first secret wasn't a piece of equipment or a radio frequency. It was mental discipline forged in a device called the Dilbert Dunker. This was a cockpit simulator mounted on rails that would plunge trainee pilots backward into a pool, flipping them upside down in darkness and cold water. The lesson was brutal and unforgettable. Panic kills faster than the ocean. When a damaged bomber hit the water, it often cartwheeled, flipped, or nosedived within seconds. The instinct was to thrash, to fight the straps, to claw for air. But honestly, survival meant doing the opposite. Pilots were drilled to take one deep breath before impact, keep their seatbelt fastened through the initial violence of the crash, and wait for all motion to stop. Only then would they methodically unbuckle, locate the canopy handle or door latch, and pull themselves out using the frame as a guide in the disorienting churn of bubbles and darkness. The critical trick was cracking the canopy slightly before impact, just an inch or two. Once submerged, water pressure would seal doors and hatches shut like a tomb, but that small gap equalized pressure and gave men the leverage they needed to shove it open and escape before the aircraft became their coffin. Once clear of the wreckage, the next challenge was staying afloat without drowning yourself in the process. Every pilot wore a Mae West life preserver, named with dark humor after the buxom Hollywood actress, but inflating it at the wrong moment was a fatal mistake repeated too many times in training accidents. The cardinal rule beaten into every airman's memory was this: never inflate inside the aircraft. An inflated vest in a flooding, inverted cockpit would pin a man against the ceiling, trapping him in rising water with his head forced into pockets of air that would disappear in seconds. The technique was to get out first, surface second, then pull the inflation cords. Some veterans would keep one hand on the cord as they swam upward through frigid blackness, their lungs screaming, their flight suits heavy as anchors, counting seconds until their face broke the surface and they could finally fill the vest with the CO2 cartridges or blow it up manually through the rubber tubes. In the heaving swells of the North Atlantic, a single man's head was nearly invisible from the air. Rescue pilots flying Catalinas or walrus amphibians often reported scanning hundreds of square miles and seeing nothing but whitecaps and shadow. The survivors who made it knew this, and they employed a technique that sounds simple but honestly required extraordinary presence of mind in freezing water. They tied themselves together, using parachute cord, belt straps, or even torn sections of their own flight suits. Men would lash themselves into a cluster, sometimes forming a human raft with the most hypothermic crew members in the center and the stronger swimmers facing outward. This created a larger visual signature for search aircraft, but it also concentrated body heat and prevented the group from drifting apart in currents and wind. In those formations, shivering violently, voices slurring from cold, men would recite jokes, sing squadron songs, and keep each other conscious until the drone of a rescue plane cut through the wind and the waves. The Allied pilots who survived ditching in the frozen Atlantic didn't do so through luck or divine intervention. They did it through training, discipline, and improvised fieldcraft born from necessity. Every technique, from the deliberate calm of the underwater escape to the human chains formed in open ocean, was a lesson written in loss and refined through survival. These men understood what we study today in bushcraft and preparedness, that knowledge, rehearsed and internalized, can turn impossible odds into survivable ones. Their story reminds us that the difference between life and death often comes down to doing the counterintuitive thing, the trained thing, when every instinct screams otherwise. If this piece of forgotten history resonated with you, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles and share this video with anyone who values the hard-won wisdom of those who came before us. This is how we keep their lessons alive. Fieldcraft Chronicles.